I would like to sincerely apologize for giving the impression that this video wouldn't take very long to make. That was before I got over 400 comments on the community post. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to cover all of these takes, that would be madness, so let me give you all a quick rundown on how this is gonna go. Less than 400 can still be a big number. In fact, I'm probably gonna have to split this video into 2 parts because there's so much to talk about. Ultimately, I ended up with around this many takes, and we'll be getting to about half of those today. A lot of you also submitted multiple takes, which is fine, but it means the actual number of takes submitted to the community post was actually closer to 800. A lot of you were also very eloquent, so while I did read your comments in full, I probably won't be reading them aloud in this video. Lastly, a lot of people were giving me comments that essentially boiled down to, this character is good, or this character is bad. And while you're perfectly valid for having those opinions, there's not much for me to talk about there, so a lot of these comments will be skipped. Now with all of that being said, I'm Lexi Waybright, and these are your BFDI Fiery Takes. I'm putting hot takes in the title so more people will see it, but I'm gonna be calling them Fiery Takes because I think that's cool. By my count, the most common hot takes I saw involved Pencil in some way, so let's get her out of the way now. The Mimikyu lover claims that Teapot Pencil is more tolerable and interesting than Decas Rhea. I chose this comment in particular because I think I can use it to highlight my thoughts on Pencil in an interesting way. Now real quick, for all of the Object Show fans who don't watch Disventure Camp, Rhea was the main villain of Disventure Camp All-Stars, and there is legitimately nothing good I can say about her writing. The writers did make an honest effort, and I appreciate what they tried to do, but they failed. Pencil is not that bad, not even close even, but when it comes to the content she's been given, I feel like the execution is somewhat clunky. Personality-wise, it makes sense for Pencil to be more jaded, but she does come off very strong, and trying to adjust to this new angry Pencil so quickly is a little bit jarring. And given that she debuted into the season and suddenly had a lot of plot importance thrust onto her, she kinda halted everyone else's progression for a little while, which didn't help. With the benefit of hindsight, I think Pencil should have subtly been incorporated back into the cast, with each of her scenes building towards a climax in a later episode. For example, have it so that Teapot 16 instead focuses primarily on Donut and Golf Ball up until the big van chase near the end of the episode. From there, you could give Pencil her big moment, or you could keep building tension with her up until Teapot 19, where it all comes out during the Battle Royale. I feel like these hypotheticals work better than what we got because Pencil isn't overshadowing her teammates, and more importantly, isn't overshadowing Lai, who almost got eliminated because she wasn't introduced into the season with nearly as much care as Pencil. So overall, I don't hate what they're doing with Pencil and Teapot, but I am starting to get sick of her just a little bit. Given that she's already had 2 seasons to show off and will eventually have IDFB as well, I would prefer a lot of that screen time go to Tree and Marker instead, or someone who has less going on than Pencil does. They are the ones who really need it. But yes, I think she is leaps and bounds better than Rhea. Keith Yeti, what do you
I hate that no good Rhea. If she were to let me dangle over a cliff, well, I don't think I'd much care for that.
Hang on, I know you. You're Portal. You used to have a bunch of videos up on this channel.
Yep, that's me. Hello, everybody!
Okay, I guess I should probably ask why you're here and why you decided to show up completely unannounced.
It's an Object Show video. I was in one of those. So, yeah.
I feel like there's still a few loose threads.
Let's do some more fiery takes. Teardrop joining Teapot was a fun decision and was a fun addition. Ooh, that one's pretty fun. What do you think, Lexi?
Okay, you know what? I have a lot of comments to go through. I will deal with you later. Look, I know a lot of people will argue that because Teardrop already made the final 3 in BFB, she shouldn't have joined Teapot, and believe me, I do understand the sentiment behind this. But ultimately, because she couldn't be put up for elimination like everyone else, her time in the game was always going to be short-lived. So, rather than give her a character arc, they used her as both a challenge obstacle and as a way to support other characters like Eraser, and I think this was a very good choice. Her physical comedy really added to certain scenes, such as the fight with DPA during episode 2, and pretty much any scene where she and Eraser are fighting. I'll talk about this later in the video, but I think because of this, he ended up as a much more well-rounded character. Tragically, the voters just did not show up for him when he needed it, but that's definitely not Teardrop's fault. And lastly, BFB should have had more care. No, if anything, considering that both Spongy and Loser are in this cast, I think they honestly could have gone down to 12. That way, Ruby could have at least been on the team that fits her color. The only people I see winning are GB, Pen, Fanny, and Donut. I'm not really big on either Golf Ball or Fanny, so preferably it's not one of them who ends up winning, and while Pen could probably be a decent winner, I think there are plenty of better options. But I do agree that Donut would be a good winner. In fact, out of everyone left in the cast, I think that he is currently the best option. Not only does he have the underdog factor going for him, but I think he has by far the most interesting relationship with One. One tricked so many people into making deals with her, but when she gets to Donut, he fucking kicks her in the face, and that is without question one of the coolest moments in all of BFDI. Donut always brings the hype, and as of right now, I think he is the only person that I want to see take down One. Cause like, imagine the finale, right? One has absorbed a bunch of power and is about to destroy everyone, but then Donut and X leap into action and multiply One by 0, and then Donut gets the factor of 1, and that's how he wins the power of 2. I need something like that to happen. I think it is too good to pass up. Yeah, I'm Team Donut, but if he doesn't win, I don't know, I guess Price Tag would be a funny winner. It's the community's fault for Pin's Teapot elimination. They caused J&J to scrap her cheating arc, and if it stayed, she could have brought something more to the table. No, I think the reason why Pin got eliminated in Teapot is BFDIA. Now, I'm going to make the potentially bold claim of stating that pretty much every character in BFDIA post-hiatus is better than their counterpart version in Teapot. The only exceptions are Yellowface and potentially Golf Ball, depending on what they do with her, but that remains to be seen. So if you're someone who votes on both shows and you see how well Pin is doing in BFDIA, are you really going to stick your neck out to keep her in Teapot? Maybe you will if you're a massive Pin fan, but otherwise, why keep Teapot Pin around when BFDIA Pin is still there? It probably didn't help that she got put on Death Pack, which is a very dangerous team to be on. The quartet of Tree, Fanny, Black Hole, and Marker are very hard to beat out in the votes. I think if Vote to Save eliminated the 2 lowest voted contestants regardless of team, then these 4 would be guaranteed top 10. So, given the time frame when Pin got eliminated, I don't think it's a surprise that a lot of people wanted to save the 4 really cool newbies over someone who is already guaranteed to do well in BFDIA. Admittedly, I didn't really care for Pin's Let's Not Cheat in the Challenges plot, but even if it stayed, I don't think it would have done her any favors. Teapot Pin is just unfortunately not as interesting as her BFDIA counterpart, and I don't think the cheating plot would have changed that at all. Fiery Jr. could have easily taken Pencil's role in Teapot. Oh wow, that is an out there opinion. I love that you sent this in, but like, I do like your idea, and it's clear to me that you're very passionate about Fiery Jr., which is cool, but I regret to inform you that I am not the person to validate this opinion. I don't mean to downplay your opinion, but the thought of Fiery Jr. replacing Pencil in the last few episodes of Teapot is just so funny to me. Could you imagine a moody little Fiery Jr. running around the hotel killing people left and right? Imagine Fiery Jr. trying to drive the Free Smart super van. He couldn't do it. His arms are too small, so he can't move the wheel. He's too short to see over the dashboard. So he just be bumping into shit. He couldn't reach the gas pedals. I just imagine he tries to get the van to start, but he realizes he can't do it, so he's like, Donut, I can't drive the van! BFDI is the only object show to take advantage of the fact that it is an object show, which can primarily be attributed to how zany it is and how well it utilizes the concept. Now I will say, BFDI does have a big advantage here because it's not just an object show, it's the object show. Every other object show is working off of the groundwork that BFDI set up, and unsurprisingly, a lot of them fall short of the original. But I do get your point. When you separate certain object shows from the rest of the community, it starts to become clear that these characters don't need to be objects, and I think that has to do with tone more than anything else. BFDI is a lot like The Amazing World of Gumball, in the sense that both shows take place in a very weird setting that is mostly normal for the characters, and based on that, both shows are able to create their best comedy and their best dramatic moments. And while I think that formula works great for these two shows, a lot of other object shows are trying to tell their own story, and for some of them, the object show formula doesn't work nearly as well. Here's a little test I like to do when I pick up a new object show. Ask yourself if the show benefits from the characters being objects. Oftentimes, when the answer is yes, I'll end up liking the show a lot more, because it uses the concept much more effectively. But even then, none of them are ever going to do it as well as BFDI, because the entire concept of the object show was made for BFDI. Even Inanimate Insanity, BFDI's eternal understudy, really didn't use the concept as well as they could have until arguably season 3. I think if you're going to make your own object show, or any show in this format for that matter, don't just make it X show, but with your own OCs. The Danganronpa fandom does this a lot, and that's why most fangins are boring, but I digress. But overall, the point I want to make is that the best object shows are the ones that put a creative spin on the cast and the format. People keep calling Price Tag a Naily clone, but if anything, Naily is a discount price tag. Okay, look, they're both goofy and silly, and I love them both, and I wish Naily was still in the show. Be nice to both of them. Coiny is an interesting character. Yes, I agree. Go watch my Coiny video for my full thoughts on that. Coiny and Pin's reunion in episode 21 is kinda underwhelming. Yeah, I won't lie, it kind of is. Truth be told, while this episode has some highlights, I don't really think the execution was handled the best. The important players in this episode are supposed to be Leafy, Pin, and Coiny, but given that Leafy and Pin are occupied with a silly yellow tomato plot, Coiny has, like, nothing going on until the very end. I like that yellow tomato plot too, but ultimately I think the roles of this one needed to be shuffled around. Instead of Pin, I would have Needle, Book, and Tennis Ball involved with Leafy's plot. That way, we'd still have all the fun tomato shenanigans, but we'd also get a few added dynamics to play around with. From there, have Golf Ball's group escape evil Leafy early on, leaving Coiny and Pin to have to deal with her for the majority of the episode. By this point, Coiny and Pin would still be mad at each other, but the threat of evil Leafy would force them to work together again, giving them the opportunity to hash out their problems and eventually make up. We do lose out on Pin and Leafy's dynamic in this episode, which is a shame, but I'm gonna be honest, I think the Coiny stuff is a little bit more important. I think something like this would have made the end of the episode that much stronger. Teapot 18 is better than Teapot 19. I wholeheartedly agree. Teapot 18 is fun, fast-paced, and has a challenge concept that I really like. I wasn't super fond of how Balloony was handled, but other than that, I really liked it. I think a filler episode focusing on the characters still competing in Teapot probably would have been better, but I like Teapot 18 for what it is. Teapot 19, while I still do like it, has some really wonky screen time distribution, and a couple of scenes that kinda drag. Like, did we really need the scene of Lai killing the recommended characters to be that long? I don't think so. Vote to Save needs revision because it screws over groups and favors individuals. I think this is true to a degree, but honestly not as big of a problem as you're claiming it to be. One of the biggest object show memes back in the day was, hey, don't be mean or else the viewers will vote you out. And I feel like Vote to Save does a lot to fix that problem. I feel like every character should be able to stand on their own even if they spend most of their time in a group dynamic. And if every individual member is pulling their weight, then the group will fare a lot better. As mentioned earlier, when Death Pact again first formed, the original quartet beat out all of the newbies, including Pin, who is arguably one of the most popular characters. Tree isn't being held back by the fact that he's part of a group, he's being held back because Sam hates him. Likewise, I think it's worth noting that if Post-Split handled votes the same way we do now, the Blocky Woody Taco trio would have all outplaced the eventual winner of the season. And even then, I don't think having to split votes is what doomed this trio, because Woody had over 3,000 more votes than everyone else. He very easily could have shared. And considering that this was during the period where people could track the votes live and how close the final vote ended up being, if all of these voters were actually working together to save the group, they all would have been safe. It wasn't Vote to Save that got Taco eliminated, it was me and my 7 alternate accounts.
How dare you!
Calm down, I didn't actually.
You have befouled the sanctity of the BFDI viewer vote. How could you do such a dastardly deed?
I didn't actually use any alt accounts. I voted fair and square for Flower, which did directly affect the result of the elimination, but I didn't do anything wrong.
So you never used alternative accounts to affect the result of a BFDI vote?
I really wanted to save 8-Ball.
Cheater!
I was 13!
A 13-year-old cheater!
Oh my god.
I bet you eat pumpkins for breakfast.
I gotta get Keith Yeti back. BFDIA has better writing than Teapot. I also made a video about this. Go check it out. People only have a problem with misbalanced screen time when their favorites are being overlooked. At least for me, I can tell you that I do not subscribe to this notion. As much as I don't like Fanny, I think what they've been doing with her recently is a major overcorrection. I don't really want her to be in the show anymore, but if she's gonna stick around, you might as well give her something fun to do. That's just my stance on the matter. I believe this is true for everyone else to some degree, but I'm not everyone else, so I won't speak on that. People need to stop criticizing BFDI the same way as Total Drama and Disventure Camp. As someone who has analyzed Disventure Camp more than the vast majority of people in the fandom, I'm going to exclude it from this conversation because it is not, nor will it ever be, on BFDI's level. But in relation to Total Drama, I think there is some truth here. The Total Drama fandom, for the most part, knows exactly what this show is about. They don't expect Total Drama to become something that it isn't. They understand the premise and they're happy with the formula. The problem occurs when the showrunners handle parts of that formula incorrectly, or in a way that isn't very narratively satisfying. With BFDI fans, on the other hand, a lot of them have this idea for what they want the show to be and fully expect J&J to cater to their whims. And when that predictably doesn't happen, they criticize the show, not because of bad writing or mistakes, but because the show isn't exactly what they want it to be. There are legitimate reasons to criticize BFDI, and you're free to dislike any part of it, but there are people who unironically think that this show needs to take itself more seriously, who think the challenges are too nonsensical, and that it should be more like Total Drama. And as much as I'd like to say to these people, hey, this is a show where people can freeze the sun by calling it names, maybe don't take it too seriously, I don't have to do that, because Inanimate Insanity exists and covers all of those bases. That's the show that I think a lot of these people want to watch and probably should be watching. And I don't think BFDI should become Inanimate Insanity. Mostly because BFDI is better in basically every way, but that's not relevant right now. The point is, we really should be keeping BFDI casual, and I think a big part of that is letting go of our expectations for what the show should be and appreciating it for what it is. BFB has many flaws, but 4 is not one of those flaws. 4 is a complicated character who really deserves his own video, if I'm honest. He's not a perfect character, and there were definitely times in post-split where he did start to get on my nerves, but I do think he's better there. I liked that 4 was a BFDI fan, and I liked how he began to spiral once things started going wrong. I mean, if I showed up in the BFDI world and everyone started shunning me, I think I'd be pretty upset as well. Was he a bit of a scoundrel? Yes, absolutely, but I still think he had plenty of genuinely funny and enjoyable moments to balance him out, and all of that together made for a very flawed but still enjoyable host. I get why some people don't like him, but I think he was handled pretty well. I wish I could say the same for X, but no, I cannot. Pen has a better arc of loneliness and depression than Lightbulb in Inanimate Insanity. I really like what they're doing with Pen. There used to be a pretty big joke in the fandom that Pen was boring and didn't really have a personality, but people still really liked him anyway. And I very much enjoy how his storyline actually takes that into account. Like, yeah, what would Pen do if he didn't have his boys with him? Turns out, he's really lonely because he just doesn't connect with people that well. And I think the way that struggle is handled is both realistic and engaging. With Lightbulb, I think it's handled pretty well for the most part, but during the latter half of Season 2's run, it became very clear that she was not a priority, and it kinda showed. Both are good, and if BFDI and II ever did a more dramatic crossover, I think these two should definitely talk. I think that'd be a nice scene. But I think that this is the best Pen content we've ever gotten for him, and Lightbulb really excels in other areas, so for this particular debate, I will give it to Pen. I feel like the writers played their hand far too early with 1. Yes, absolutely. Out of every take I've gone over so far, this is the one I agree with the most. One was built up very well. She had a few subtle appearances at first before she began interacting with the contestants. And each of these interactions slowly became more and more sinister, up until she tried to manipulate Donut, and we got to see her true colors for the very first time. This is easily her best scene, and also Donut's best scene, and her best dynamic, and also his best dynamic. God, I love these two together so much. This is why he needs to win the season. That being said, that was episode 17, and after a revelation like that, I think we needed at least 2 or 3 non-filler episodes before she reappeared. That'd be just enough time for the audience to get comfortable with the season again before she returns, and then everyone's like, oh no, one's back! I'm tempted to say that the final 15 was a little bit too early to have this big moment with one in episode 19, but I don't know what Sam has planned for the rest of the season, so maybe there's a reason it's like this. My only guess as to why they're going so fast with one is because they're gonna bring 3 into the plot, and they'll have to set them up as well. And I am very skeptical about this, because Teapot is already juggling so much. Do we really need another algebraian to keep track of? I think Teapot is starting to get a little too ambitious for its own good, and I think how one has been handled is kind of testament to that. For multiple reasons, Winner is not a good character. I think that Winner is in a very unfortunate situation because I believe the writers were banking on Clock making it a lot further than he did. That is just speculation on my part, but in my mind it makes sense. Out of everyone else on the S, they were the 2 that had the most going on, so assuming that this arc would carry both of them decently far, by the time one of them got eliminated, the writers could figure something else out. But, yeah, didn't quite work out that way. I like Winner, but even I could admit that they're being hard carried by non-binary swag. The creative team is clearly trying to get something going for Winner. They wouldn't have brought Loser back into the narrative for any other reason. Certainly not because Loser himself has fans. I just hope that they pick up momentum soon, because if next episode comes around and Pencil is still getting the most focus on Cloudye, I will be upset. Teardrop is overrated and had plot armor in Teapot. Now, it's comments like these that make it painfully apparent that a lot of you do not know what plot armor means. Teardrop was in 8 episodes of Teapot and was predestined to lose from the moment she debuted. That is the opposite of plot armor. Initially, I was going to go on a small tangent about what plot armor is and how the definition of the term has shifted wildly over time, but I decided to cut it because that could honestly be its own video. But the point is ultimately that Teardrop did not have it. She was less an actual competitor and more of a challenge obstacle that tested the other contestants physically. Teardrop was never meant to have this amazing run in Teapot. She was meant to be a fun little addition. Whether or not you think she succeeded in doing that is up to you, but to say she has plot armor is more than a little far-fetched.
Teardrop may not have plot armor, but you want to know who does?
I don't, no.
That's right, people who get away with cheating.
See this? This is why Pin's no cheating plot didn't last for very long.
Didn't last very long, huh? Just like all the pumpkins in the pumpkin patch, which you ate, because you're a cheater.
Look, dude, if you're gonna spend the entire video calling me a cheater, I don't think you're going to make a very good impression on the audience.
I don't think you are going to... Oh, okay. I thought about it for a moment. You might actually have a point.
I usually do.
I would like to review the next hot take, so that I may redeem myself in the eyes of the viewers.
You know what? Why not? I got like 50 of these. You can do one.
Yay! Okay, I'm ready. One YouTuber commented claims that BFB post-split was one of the best elimination orders in the entire series. Now, this is a very interesting opinion, but I think it's worth noting that none of the post-split characters know how to teleport, and everyone knows that if you want to be one of the cool kids, you gotta be able to teleport. See Evil Leafy? She can teleport, and that's awesome. But then you have posers like John Roxon or whatever the flip his name is, and he can't teleport. You want to know why? Because nobody loves him. And this is why I think Evil Leafy should rejoin and win BFDIA, and why Valve should make Portal 3.
You know, I think I'm gonna handle the takes from here on out. Annalena Oo makes the claim that 1 is the best villain in all of media, up there with Steve Cobbs, Heather, Julia, Alejandro, and Genu. Anna, I read your entire comment and I am so glad that 1 has left such a positive impression on you. You have a very lovely list of favorite villains too. I can't fully agree that 1 is the best villain in all of media because I think it's still a little bit too early for that. There's a lot of 1's story that we haven't seen, so a lot of things could change. But I think her powers are cool, I like the Dealmaker angle she has going on, and I think the build-up to her reveal was masterfully handled. I hope that by the time Teapot wraps up, 1 will be everything you want her to be and more. Tennis Ball should win BFDIA because he's Carrie's favorite. I'm like 90% sure that Carrie and Michael's joint favorite is Spongy because he keeps coming back to the game after being eliminated like 50 billion times, but I digress. I'm half tempted to make this into its own video as well because I have a lot to say about this topic. I want Tennis Ball to win BFDIA so badly. I don't dislike any of the other finalist options, but none of them are Tennis Ball. BFDIA Tennis Ball is one of the very few fictional characters that I can honestly say might be perfect. Tennis Ball is without peer and without equal, and that is why I will be voting for him to win BFDIA. Thank you. And secondly, BFB should never have had 64 contestants. Yeah. I think now we're finally starting to reap some of the benefits of that initially large cast, in the sense that all of these new characters have been established and now have their own fan bases. It's kind of like unlocking a ton of characters in a fighting game. It's kind of a thrill, and now that we've had the chance to experience all of them, I think we're better for it. But the process it took for us to get to this point was a little sloppy, I won't lie. Granted, I doubt that any show could handle that many characters, and I think that Satomi did the best job that she could have. But we're coming up on 8 years since episode 1 dropped, and we're getting new ones on average about every 2 months. So if we do our math, we're probably in this for about another year. Which, you know, not the worst show to be stuck with for that long, but I think 8 years would start to wear on anyone. And unlike some other shows in this format, I'm actually excited to see what Season 5 has to offer. Or Season 6. Okay, the joke works better if we count Teapot as Season 4B, but I know someone's gonna come at me for saying that, so there it is. Point is, I agree with this take. Pencil's arc would have been received better if the writers let her take a backseat for an episode or two, and this goes to show how unbalanced Teapot's screen time is. In my opinion, there are multiple reasons why Teapot's screen time distribution is so unbalanced. There's the pacing, the amount of characters, all of 1's scenes, and then a few instances of Sam maybe playing favorites just a little bit. The reason why I think Pencil specifically rubbed people the wrong way is because, upon returning to the game, she overshadowed Lai, who returned alongside her, as well as everyone else on Cloudye. On Cloudye, it's a little more understandable because on paper they all got about the same amount of screen time. But during that time, Pencil was going through a crisis related to her personal trauma, and had multiple big character moments post-return. Compare that to Winner, whose 2 biggest dynamics are a guy who went to the other show, and fucking Clock. And it's clear that we have a disparity. Episode 16 is pretty much just the pen and pencil episode, and while I ultimately like them in this episode, I don't like how the rest of Cloudye are reduced to just being Pencil's team. I really like this episode, but the fact that they decided to give Pencil all the focus and then put Cloudye up for a double elimination is something I will not defend because it's just bad writing. As much as I don't really care for them, both Pillow and Yellowface were done incredibly dirty by this. And if my King Donut wasn't in that van, he definitely would have gone out instead, and had that happened, I would have been irate. Following that, I think sidelining Lai in favor of Pencil was a really baffling decision, especially considering Lai almost got eliminated because of this, and because she was the one who actually won the revote. With the benefit of hindsight, I think one way to mitigate Teapot's plot relevance disparity would have been to turn away from individual character arcs, and instead focus on plotlines that incorporate entire teams. For example, assume each team has their own plotline that incorporates all of the characters, plus everything with 1, 2, 4, and the other number in between. That's 5 plot lines to keep you going for a while, and if you cycle between them every few episodes, I think that would have gone a long way towards making every character feel important, rather than just a few. Hey everyone, it's me. I'm editing this at 2 AM. I just wanted to make a quick addendum to this part of the video. When I suggested focusing on team dynamics rather than individual character arcs, I meant that as a temporary solution until the cast was worked down to a more manageable number. some of you might also be saying, oh, but Lexi, in a previous video, you said that the Teapot teams just sort of blended together into one big conglomerate. Well, what's this about? What I'm saying is that you can write a storyline centered around a group of characters and still make all of them feel important and unique and like their own characters within that group. This is something that I think Teapot has really struggled with and that I think BFDIA post-hiatus does really well. Obviously, Teapot has more characters, so it's harder, blah blah blah. I feel like I've been saying that for the majority of the video, so I take it at this point you understand what I'm going for. Different characters would still need to get a bit more focus per episode, but otherwise, I think this idea could have worked. Balancing screen time and plot relevance with an ensemble cast is always going to be a tall order, especially for a show like Teapot, where all of these characters should theoretically be main characters. So despite the fact that Pencil may have been a bit overbearing, I still commend the writers for tackling this balancing act as best they could. The Taco book arc wasn't that bad. Narratively, no, but the fact that Liza dodged so many eliminations just so this arc could happen probably wasn't a great thing. Because you know for a fact that if they lost a single challenge before their arc's resolution, Book was cooked, and Satomi knew that. And if I'm honest, the fact that Book got that luxury and Match didn't doesn't really sit well with me either. I also take personal issue with this, because Beep went to 3 eliminations before these guys even went to 1. And had that not happened, David would have made it to Teapot. He probably wouldn't have done very well, but I would have liked to see him there. Now, all that being said, I do mostly like what the Taco book arc turned out to be. I love Taco as a character, and even though we had to go through a lot of hoops to get there, I think the resolution of this arc was handled pretty well. So for those reasons, the only big problem I have with it is that David got screwed over, but I guess I'm the only one who cares about that, so I'll just be sad by myself. Pen and Donut aren't justified in getting top 15 just because they're getting stuff now. Okay then, so who would be justified? I don't think that any character in this show is entitled to any given placement. That's not how BFDI works. I won't deny that they weren't the most prevalent characters in early Teapot, but in their defense, there were 40 characters to keep track of. Fanny's been pretty absent for the last couple episodes. Should we take her out of the winner's pool as well? I understand where you're coming from, and if we were talking about another elimination show, or hell, a piece of elimination-based media, I would be very inclined to agree with you. But unlike a show like Total Drama, BFDI's viewer voting aspect means that it has to have a loose narrative to accommodate for anyone getting eliminated. So I think it's fine that not every character has a clear-cut story arc. Everyone just kind of falls into place over time, which I think is really fun. I think this type of spontaneous storytelling often leads to some very fun arcs and dynamics. So I'm not trying to say that your opinion is wrong, but I think depending on how you look at it, you could make a very similar argument for the majority of the cast. I think the improvised storylines that come together through the viewer voting are awesome, but that does come with the caveat that long-form storylines don't work as well in this format.
It sounds like there's a fundamental problem with the show that needs to be addressed.
What?
Don't worry about me, Lexi Waybright, owner of the Lech Gang YouTube channel. We'll have a discussion about this at the end of the video.
We're actually gonna split this one into 2. Wait, hold on, what about excuse me, you are not my silly little creature assistant. What did you do with him?
I put him in a bowl.
You put him in a bowl.
Someone please help me. I am being put in a bowl.
Fish Monster was the best BFDIA host. Low-key, he kinda was. I really enjoyed seeing them reuse this old character in such a fun role. It really helped me move past Fries' elimination, which I otherwise would have been really sad about. The 3-team phase in BFDI had the best voting, as it allowed for audience participation without forcing the writers down one path. I am not really sure about this one. I think it definitely worked well in BFDI because the series was far more casual by that point. So I think if this format was brought back for the post-team swap phase of Teapot, it probably wouldn't have gone over that well. Imagine if during Teapot 20's elimination, Book and Price Tag voted to keep Snowball in the game, eliminating Grassy despite him having more votes to stay. Knowing how passionate this fandom is, Grassy's fans would have had an apoplectic reaction. We don't need some giant snowball incident tearing apart the fandom, okay? Nickelgate was bad enough. And even though it wouldn't have happened with her given how she went out, imagine if Pillow went out this way. There would have been fires in the streets. From a storytelling standpoint, I actually do agree that this method of elimination would be a good idea. In fact, I think this type of approach would be a perfect fit for a more serialized show like Inanimate Insanity. But for something like Teapot, I think the change would be a little too sudden, especially if it was introduced midway through the season. But in an alternate timeline where this method of elimination has been the standard since pre-split, I think they could have made it work. Bottle Teapot was the best guest host. Okay, you know what? You're totally right on this one. Bottle was like the best part of that episode. Okay, wait, no, the donuts. Okay, second best part of the episode. I'm sorry, Fish Monster, but my Queen Bottle has taken your crown that I gave you like 3 minutes ago. I'm sorry. There are no terrible characters in BFDI. I think I agree with that. BFDI's cast is in a weird position because there are multiple writers that cover different seasons, and I feel like some of them rate certain characters better than others. So I feel like given the right combination, pretty much any character in the show could excel and become a fan favorite. Cause let's be honest, if it wasn't for BFDIA, would anyone really care about Needle and Fries? I hazard a guess that they probably wouldn't. At least not as much as they do now. If I had to point to any character as an example of this phenomenon, I would easily say Lollipop, who in pre-split is a very irritating nothing burger of a character, and in post-split is one of the funniest and most enjoyable characters in the cast. And a lesbian icon, because why not? I think that goes to show how easy it is to make these characters work, because contrary to what some people will tell you, they really aren't that complex. And that really works in BFDI's favor, because most characters can fit any situation, which is a level of flexibility that most shows don't have. So even though there are a few characters who I don't like all that much, I do agree that none of them are terrible. Don't hate on people who survived a bottom 2 elimination just for, quote-unquote, robbing better characters. Yes, see, exactly. This is why all of you Pillow fans need to leave Donut alone. Direct your hatred towards Pencil, or Golf Ball, or Winner, or someone else. Please hop off my king, he didn't do anything wrong. This whole phenomenon is the main reason why I'm unsure about a bottom 2 style of elimination working in Teapot. But it doesn't surprise me that some people are like this. I mean, there were a lot of people very upset that Non-Existy didn't get added to the show. But rest assured, we will be talking about that later, so for now, let's move on. Teapot doesn't know how to handle its characters. When they don't know what to do with someone, they give them a gimmick. Given the characters you brought up in your comment, I'm going to assume by gimmicks, you're talking about Gady's friendship with 2, Eraser's rivalry with Teardrop, and everything to do with TB and Force. And if that is what you mean, then I'm sorry, but I don't think this is a very good take. Eraser's rivalry with Teardrop highlights his very strong competitive nature, but also his deep respect for the contestants that give him a good challenge. This characterization did a lot to differentiate Eraser from Blocky and Snowball, both of whom were, and honestly still are, massively more popular than him, since all 3 fit the same archetype for the longest time. As for Gady, her gimmick, big air quotes there, was absolutely vital in characterizing 2. Keep in mind that friendship started in episode 2, when 2 was just being established as the new host, and because of their friendship with Gady, we got a really good look at 2's personality and how they'd be different from 4. As for Tennis Ball and Force, I won't lie, I really don't like this joke at all, but in principle, I don't think it's a bad thing to give a character a gimmick like this. Using Tennis Ball specifically as an example, he was not a major character in Teapot 17 or 19. So, given the number of important plotlines going on, why not give him something fun to do for these episodes until it is his turn in the spotlight? Granted, I don't really like Force, but that just has to do with how the joke is set up, and the fact that Tennis Ball got put up twice without anything else to help him. The main problem that I have with Force is that it is so obviously a veiled attempt to hide the fact that they want Tennis Ball to get voted off. Pen is one of the main characters of Teapot 16, Bottle hosts Teapot 17, and Lai is a very big player in Teapot 19. Tennis Ball is on a team with all of them, and the only thing he's had to do these past few episodes is get beat up by a Force. That is not something you do on accident. So ultimately, gimmicks and dynamics can benefit a character if they're handled well, but they aren't a substitute for actual narrative arcs. And while BFDI doesn't handle these things perfectly, I still think they handle them pretty well for the most part. Teapot needs to stop trying to raise the stakes in every episode, as it leaves little to no time to develop the characters and results in underdeveloped plotlines. This is something I brought up in my video on why BFDIA is better than Teapot, so needless to say, I'm on board. I really appreciate the effort that goes into some of these challenges, but sometimes it feels like they're trying just way too hard. I think a lower stakes challenge would actually benefit the Teapot cast a lot by giving them a chance to slow down and just hang out with each other. Given that Teapot 20 is premiering in theaters, I'm willing to bet that this is not going to be one of those challenges, but hey, maybe for Teapot 21, when things need to wind down, they could do something a bit less, heavy? These high-stakes challenges definitely do have their place within the series, and I happen to like a lot of them, but I hope that one of these upcoming episodes allows for the Teapot narrative to just slow down a little bit. BFDI's dialogue is a little too wacky and exaggerated during crucial scenes. Now, after reading your comment, I understand where you're coming from, and I do get why you take issue with this, but I disagree for a few reasons. Firstly, as someone who's been watching this show for over half my life, I've been with these characters since the beginning, and they've always talked like that. It's something you get used to after a while. Secondly, I think comparing BFDI to other object shows that are also quote-unquote kid-friendly is a bit misguided. I'm going to use Inanimate Insanity and Excellent Entities as examples because you brought them up and because I'm very familiar with both of them. Even though both of these shows are family friendly, I believe the target audience is meant to skew a bit older. Excellent Entities, in my mind, is very clearly written for teenagers and adults first. Given the focus on romance, strategy, and a general sense of humor that is definitely more adult-oriented, I think that's a fair claim to make. I think about that one episode where all those Chow got brutally killed, and I'm pretty confident in my assertion here. As for Inanimate Insanity, I think the scope of the story they wanted to tell just kept growing bigger over time, to the point where I think II Season 2 is best appreciated if you grew up with it and matured alongside the writing staff. I would argue that these shows, and most object shows if I'm honest, are generally made for teenagers and adults first, but are still palatable for younger kids. For BFDI though, the majority of the audience is young children, so I don't think it's a problem that the dialogue is a little more exaggerated to accommodate that. Thirdly, I feel like a lot of the time, the characters themselves don't really know how they feel. I cite Fiery and Leafy's makeup conversation in Post-Split as a really good example of this. Neither of them fully realize how they feel and how their actions have affected one another until they took the time to have a conversation about it. And for characters who, to me, at this point in the timeline, come off as young adults, I think that's really neat. I view this as the BFDI characters learning how to be vulnerable with one another, because in the first season they didn't have any big problems to work through. But now that they're being confronted with broken friendships, personal trauma, and the cold reality of one's machinations, they have to come to terms with that, and they're not the best at doing that yet. Sure, the dialogue might not be as dramatic as it is in Inanimate Insanity, but I think that goes to show how the BFDI cast are still trying to come to terms with who they are and how they feel. And I think there's something really special about that. Post-Split is way overhated. I've always stood by the opinion that the first few episodes of Post-Split are decent but nothing special, but after BFB 20 things do start to pick up. I really like Post-Split. I love the character dynamics, 4 is at his best here, the challenges are exciting as always, and oh my god, the Pillory Ruins are gorgeous. Easily my favorite location in Goiki, no question. I know why not everyone is huge on Post-Split because it is a bit on the sillier side, and I know that not everyone is into that. Not to mention, this is when all the voting wars got started, so I think some people probably have bad memories of Post-Split because of that. This is all my subjective opinion though, and you don't have to agree with me, but at the very least, can we stop pushing the narrative that the finale was rigged for Flower? Like, I'll make a video talking about it if you need convincing, but I am positive that it was not rigged, and I will die on the hill that it wasn't. Anyway, I think Post-Split is awesome, and while I understand that some people don't like it, it does not deserve the monstrously bad reputation that it has. Ditto for Reboot Season 2, because I feel very similarly about that season. Apparently there are people out there that think both of these two seasons are somehow worse than Sonic TDI, which is an opinion to have, certainly, and one that I begrudgingly respect. Maybe. Not that any of those people would be watching this video, but if they are, you don't know how bad it gets. Anyway, post-split is awesome. The OSC has a negativity problem. I won't go into too much detail about this point specifically, but yes, it absolutely does. I don't mean to keep harping on her like this, but you all can handle Pillow's elimination. Until you lose a main in Mashup Week Megamix, you do not know what a truly devastating elimination feels like. BFDI is comparatively not that bad. I think it's an attachment problem where people pick a character to root for, and when that character gets eliminated, so does a lot of their goodwill for everything else. I would suggest to these people to just not take BFDI so seriously, but I know that's not particularly helpful advice, so I don't know, if any of you have any solutions for this, I'd love to hear them. At the end of the day, we all love this show, and even though it's not perfect, I think we would all benefit from taking a moment to remind ourselves of that. Non-existy fans are annoying. Okay, clearly I am missing something, because why does anyone care about non-existy? The whole point of non-existy is that they aren't a real character. No personality, no face, no voice, literally nothing. They are literally nothing. I can understand being a non-existy fan for the bit, but there were people genuinely upset that Price Tag joined Teapot as the second debuter over non-existy. And if by chance any of you watching this video are one of those people, tell me, what did you honestly think they were going to do with non-existy? At best, the characters would pretend that there's another person in the show competing with them, and at worst, they just don't acknowledge non-existy at all. Assume we live in a timeline where non-existy joins Just Not in place of Price Tag. I guarantee you they survive maybe one elimination, you know, because funny, and then the second time Just Not loses, they are gone. It would just be David all over again. The one thing I'll say in non-existy's defense is that because they lack any traits, they can't annoy me, so I already like non-existy more than I like Golf Ball. Okay, I exaggerated for the bit there. I don't fully believe that. I was just saying that to be funny. I do not get the hype for non-existy at all. Sam is a better writer. Sam is a better writer than Satomi. Oh, okay. This one is going to be tough to answer because we're dealing with real people with real feelings, but I will try my best to answer this question. Why did I say question? It's not a question. As writers, I think both Satomi and Sam are very good at what they do, but in my opinion, they both excel in different areas. Satomi's challenges feel like fun excursions, like sillier versions of Total Drama challenges, while Sam's challenges feel like large-scale spectacles. They remind me of shows like The Amazing World of Gumball with how off-the-wall and high-stakes they can be. I think Satomi's writing was a lot funnier, but Sam is a lot better with dialogue. Satomi did a much better job handling such a large cast, while Sam is better at actually getting episodes out. They're both really good about writing character interactions, but neither of them are great with pacing. Ironically, in that sense, they have the same problem. Under Satomi, pre-split was moving way too slow and would have taken easily 10 years to finish. Meanwhile, Sam's writing is incredibly fast, to the point where it's hard to sit and enjoy Teapot episodes because of how quick they are. Despite that, they are both a crucial part of BFDI's history, very talented writers, and I'm eternally grateful for both of their contributions to the series. But in my personal opinion, the best writer is Joseph Pak. We always should have been able to save 2 people per vote. I agree with you that it would have been better, but like, hindsight is 20/20, you know? By this same logic, I think it would have been better if Teapot's voting was always handled via a Google form, because that definitely would have changed the outcome of several votes. I am nearly positive that if they had the idea back then, we always would have been able to vote 1 person per team. Likewise, if they knew something like Nickelgate was going to happen, then they would have kicked the square brackets a long time ago. I agree with this take, but I don't think we should blame the showrunners for not adding these changes sooner. Not that I think you, or anyone in specific, would do anything like that, but I felt I had to say this for all the people in the back who might have any funny ideas. And that's, oh my god, my head hurts. Portal, how long is the script?
About 25 time-consuming pages.
25? Okay, that's enough. I'm taking a break.
You've only read about half the takes so far. Are you seriously going to leave your adoring audience disappointed? Cause if so, I can step in and win them over with my rugged charm and sharp wit.
I think we're gonna go ahead with splitting this one into 2 parts, otherwise this video is never going to get out and I am never going to get paid. Plus I can, like, Sleep, which I'm pretty sure is something I need to do to survive, so there's that.
Don't worry, Wexy Labrite.
Not my name.
I'll be here to help you every step of the way. Except reading out the channel members, I'm not doing that.
Why do you feel the need to be so passive-aggressive with—
Why did you kill all of my friends? I'm gonna go get Keith Yeti out of the bowl. It's a really nice bowl, and I don't much care to lose it.
I will deal with him in part 2, but for now, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching this video. Massive thanks to Veister, who did the voice of Portal in this video. He did a phenomenal job, and I think you should all check out his channel. He's a voice actor, he's a tremendous singer, and he also voiced someone in Disventure Camp, but that last one is less important. Please go show him some support. And I want to give a super special shout out to all of my channel members. Sheepishly, Novaz, Skohei, Factually False, Sour Gut Studio, Nachos, Shoelace, Commander Cone, and my 37,000, Daniel Unlimited, ya boy Sammy 2010, and probably one more that I'm forgetting. Oh well. As always, I am so grateful for your support. You guys are really the best. I appreciate it so much, and I don't know how to explain that in a way that makes sense at 3 in the morning. Now, if you'd like to join this elite group of channel members, you are more than welcome to. The support is very much appreciated, but if you don't have the money or otherwise just don't want to, I completely understand. That being said, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, because that is completely free, and it also helps out the channel a lot. This video took a lot longer to create than I anticipated, but I think it was well worth it, and I think part 2 will be just as good. I'll make a community post about it later, but for now, I am going to bed. Goodbye.